Hey, what's up? I want to go over point filters today, and by extension, object snap tracking. These are two things that can come in extremely handy when it comes to drafting. Both of these things are all about aligning objects with other objects, and they work differently, but very similarly. So, the first thing I want to show you is object snap tracking. Okay. Um, it's easiest to just show you what object snap tracking does. Let's say I have a line here and I want to draw another line, but I want this line to match up. I want these two lines to match up to each other. How do I do that? Especially if I don't know where this line starts and ends. One of the ways you can do that is with object snap tracking. What happens is I go hover over the end of this line with an object with an OSNAP marker. After I do that, you'll notice that it leaves a marker behind, a little crosshair. When I get close to that crosshair in this direction, you'll notice it puts a little phantom line there, a dashed green line. That dashed green line is essentially an endpoint. It's like a perpendicular snap. It allows me to draw this line and end it right where this line ends. Now, it looks nice and neat because I have ortho on. If I turn ortho off, what happens is I can now place that line anywhere along that tracking marker. Okay? It also works in the other direction. Okay? Does that make sense? Because what we're doing here is we're tracking in our ortho directions, our up, down, and our left and right. Now, typically you're probably going to do this with ortho on, but maybe not always. So there we are. What's nice about this is I can also do it from the start of the line instead of the end of the line. So let's say I want to start the line where this one starts. Well, I can put a mouse over here, and now I can start anywhere along this line because I'm nearby. And by the way, this is controlled by the aperture. So I'm going to mouse over that. As I get closer, it's disappearing, appearing and disappearing because it's depending on the aperture setting. So now I can start this line here. I can also end this line here. Now I have a line that's exactly the same, but it's in a different spot. There's lots of different ways to use this, but it's essentially lining up objects. You can do it with pretty much any command. If you want to move this object and line it up to this one, just mouse over and hit that marker. And what's nice is I don't have to be like way up here anywhere near it. I can just, as long as that line pops up and my ortho is on, it's going to match it up. Okay? This kind of stuff is really super handy when drafting because it's a way for you to line up things from a distance. Without having to put it right next to it, without having to. Otherwise, if you aren't used to point filters or snap tracking, what you might be doing, and what I used to do for years and years, is draw like a construction line, and maybe move till you do a perpendicular snap, or do something like an extend. I'm sure you might be familiar with something like that, and then you go back and you erase that line. Well, snap tracking gets rid of that step. It creates that phantom line for you. That we don't have to, that construction line. You don't have to go and draw the construction line. Okay. So and the toggle for snap tracking is down here. You can also hit it with F11. It tells you in the tooltip that F11 will toggle your object snap tracking. Okay? So what are point filters and how are they similar to snap tracking? I'm going to turn snap tracking off to make full use of point filters. Point filters are also ways to line objects up. And when you're working in 2D, they kind of seem repetitive compared to and take much longer to operate than with the snap tracking. They really start to shine in 3D and become almost integral part of 3D modeling, accurate 3D modeling. They can increase the accuracy of your 3D models incredibly. So the way that point filters work is, let's say I draw a line and I want to lock this line to the x-axis only, right? The x-axis. What I'm going to see, I'm going to put a modifier in. It's a point filter. I'm going to say dot x. Okay? And it's not really necessarily locking it to the x-axis. I should rephrase that. It's not locking it to the x-axis. What I'm saying is I want to lock it to an x coordinate. That's a better way to say that. So let's say I want this line to be locked to this x coordinate, right? Same as snap tracking, meaning after I hit .x and enter, I pick a point. My point's going to be the end of this line. You'll notice, just like snap tracking, I'm locked to this x-axis. Actually, unlike snap tracking, with snap tracking, you just have to be near the line. With point filters, once I put that point filter in, there's nothing I can do now other than escape the command or not finish out the filter. It's locked. No matter where I'm at, I have locked it to an x coordinate, which is the end of this line. I can't go any further or closer than this coordinate. Okay? If I turn my ortho on, it just stays to that point. Now, the next step of this is it's asking for a y and a z coordinate. Well, I don't want to give a y and a z coordinate. I want this line to go straight across. I don't want it to go any higher or lower, and I definitely don't want it to go on a 3D z axis. So what I'm going to do is just put the @ symbol right here. Okay? With the @ symbol, it's basically saying don't do anything with the y and z. Leave them the way they are. Hit enter, and my line gets entered to that coordinate. Okay? So it's just like the object snap tracking. It's just that you're choosing whether you want to lock in the y coordinate, the x coordinate, or both if you're working in 3D. So I'll do the y coordinate. Let's say I want to line it up with this. Well, with snap tracking, I would hover over this and you'd see a little invisible line. Instead, I'm going to use .y. I'm going to select or click on the end of this line with my OSnap turned on. And now I'm locked to that y coordinate. No matter what I do, I can't get any higher or lower than that y coordinate. Okay? And we're done. So, and I'm just noticing something, and I wonder if this is a 2018 behavior. .y. That's what I thought. Okay. I couldn't remember if I put in an @ symbol. Did you guys see me put in an @ symbol? I didn't. Look what happens. I put in a line. I type in my .y. I click this. It asks for X and a Y. I right click, it goes away. Try that again. Put here, .y, click. Okay, now it's asking for an X and a Z. Here's the difference. If I put it right here and left click, no problem. Okay, we're where we want to be. But if I do a .y, select this point, and I happen to have my mouse over here when I click, it's going to place it over there instead. Why does it do this? This is going to sound funny, but what happens is, let's say I draw a 45-degree line. Actually, it's going to be 315 degrees. Okay? Now I draw that line and I put a .y. The moment that I cross, let's see. Turn my F3 off. Actually, I need to do this. And we're going to put this one on yellow. I know I'm trying to make visual aids for you to see. We'll make it green. Okay. So, .y, right? Let's say I click the end of this line. The moment that I pass this point from this point, see how it's a 45-degree angle? The moment I pass that 45-degree angle, and it has to be where my .y was placed. The moment I pass it, that's when it switches over. Up until then, it's a straight line. But the moment I pass that 45-degree angle, that's when it wants to move. So that's why you see invisibly when I do a dot, I place it, I do a dot Y, right? That's why it's straight, and then once I get to a certain point, it moves. Because basically once I've passed that 45-degree angle, then it starts going this way. All right. So what happens is from here, if I'm here and it's straight, I can just click. If not, I need to hit the @ symbol, and then it will make it straight. Okay? I know it's going to be confusing and a little hard to get used to this concept, but practice with it. Okay? Remember that .x will lock in an x coordinate, your left to right. A .y will lock in the y coordinate, your up to down. Okay? And I know we're working in like straight lines. If I say I want to do an angle and I want to do a .y and I turn my ortho off, it just means I'm locking in the y coordinate. I can't go higher or lower. That's all that is. And then I'm going to actually, I don't have to because I actually clicked. You can click. Okay? The reason that you would want to use this instead of snap tracking is mainly in 3D. Okay? Let's get to 3D. Let's say I've got a box and I extrude that box. Let's say I've got a line. I want to start that line where this box starts, and I want to end it where that box ends at the height of it, right? But I want to move it further up here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say dot. I want it to be where this y coordinate's at. I'm going to say dot y. That's where the line's going to... Actually, that's not what I want the line to start. I want the line to start further up. So but I want it to go this high, and I want it to be right in line with the x and the z. So I'm going to say dot z, dot x, and dot y. My line started up here, but it actually is in line with this one. If you look, it's in line with this. And I'll show you later in a second here how that lines up. Now I can just say dot z, right, along the z-axis. Look at your UCS and look at your z-axis. I want to be dot z of this. I don't want to move it any more in the x-axis or y-axis. I'm going to say @ symbol. There it is. Now if I start looking at this thing and orbiting around, you'll see it is lined up with that box. Okay, I randomly placed it in the y-axis, but in the z-axis, I started it at the z of this box, and I ended it at the z of this box, and I lined it up with the x. Why would you do stuff like this? Well, let's say that I've got this box, top view. I'm going to copy it over here, and I'm going to move this box vertically. Let's say I need to move this box from here to here. How am I going to do that? I don't want to move the x, y axis. I don't want to move it around. See, if I just click this line, it lines those two boxes up. I don't want to do that. I want to keep them the way they are, separate, but I want to move the elevation of this box up in the z-axis. I can do that by selecting this corner or any one of these top corners and saying dot z and choosing the appropriate relative corner on this box up here. Just say after it's done, and you'll notice that they are now still separate but matched up elevation-wise. That's a case where you would use point filters. Now let's say that I want to match up the elevation, and I also want to match it in the x-axis, but I don't want to match it in the y-axis. I don't want to match it completely. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same thing I did before, but rather than doing in two steps, a z-axis and an x-axis, I can do them at the same time. I'm going to say dot zx or xz. They both work the same. Okay? And I'm going to choose this same corner, right? I want this x-axis and I want that z-axis. Say at, and look what it's done. It's moved it, it's aligned it in the x-axis. It's aligned it in the z-axis, but it has not moved it in the y-axis. You can move in two axes at the same time by locking those coordinates in and matching things up. Again, it's going to take practice. It's going to take practice and to really get familiar with this concept, because what you're doing is when you put a point filter and you're locking it to a specific axis, you're saying I want to lock the coordinate of this in, right? When I move this box from here with the dot X over to here, I'm saying that whatever the coordinate is of this is an X coordinate. If I do this is kind of, I haven't shown this command before, but this is the ID command. An ID will show you your coordinate in space. Okay. If I put an ID on this coordinate, we'll put one like, yeah, they're all weird coordinates because I haven't put a grid or used specific coordinates. This is my X coordinate. Okay. And what I'm saying is I want this coordinate, which is totally different, to match this line at that coordinate. So I'm going to put this way, okay? And I'm going to move this dot X, match it up with this corner here, or this line, doesn't matter. Click at symbol. And now, dragging this line through, you can see that it matches up perfectly. Because what I've done is I've moved this corner of this object to match the corner of this object at that same coordinate. I've locked in that coordinate for the X-axis. That's what you're doing, just in 3 different axes, okay? So I would say if you're going to be working in 2D majority of the time, you're going to want to use, and even in, like, especially in layout where you can't work in 3D, you're going to want to use your object snap tracking. It's just so much faster. If you're going to be working in 3D, use point filters. Can you use point filters in 3D? Yes. It's just trickier. You can do something like this, and it puts that marker there, but it doesn't really play all that well with the Z-axis. You can see it's not coming up. I'm even turning my ortho off, and you don't even see it pop up. Eventually, there it is. You'll see it there. It's like a Y-axis lineup. So if you're working in 3D, highly recommending that you're going to use point filters. If you're confused about point filters, go into the help file. Read. Sometimes it's easier to read than just listen. I've shown you examples here, but sometimes it's easier to just read it. One last tip for point filters. You can access these point filters from, let me undo this. You can access these point filters from the context menu of holding Shift or Control and right-clicking, and go to Point Filters, and you've got them here: .x, y, and z, then x, y, x, z, or y, z. So I'll just say like .x, and you go from here to, actually we want to go here, base point, point filters, .x, there. And then @ symbol. I believe if you don't use @ symbol, when you do that same move command, it will not enforce that point filter. If I just right click, nothing happens. I mean, it moves in another weird place. So you want to use that @ symbol after you've done your point filter. If you don't need to use any more point filters, use that @ symbol to finish out the command. So hopefully that has, in a long-winded breath, explained point filters and how you can use them. Practice them, get used to them, because they will make you a better modeler. I can guarantee you that. You're gonna want to get used to being able to do that. One last tip. Actually, I should have thought of this earlier, and I hate to be extending this out, but I'm gonna erase this and say ID. See how this X coordinate says 19? Let's say I want to put that on an even coordinate of 20, right? Without having to figure out the difference and type in the distance, which may not even be the exact distance, because this is a rounded number. One of the ways to do that, this is really critical. If you want to put things on even coordinates in your working space, right? I ID this, and it says, oh, here, that's my coordinate, minus 19.7417. Let's say I want to put that at 20. I'm going to do a move command. I'm going to click my base point, and I'm going to say .x, and it's asking me for a coordinate. I can click an object to snap to that, and that'll be my coordinate. I can pick a point in space, and that'll be my coordinate, or I can type in a coordinate. What I'm going to do is say 20, because I want my x-axis to be 20, comma 0, comma 0. And that's the equivalent of a line that is 20 units away from the x-axis and me snapping to that, the end of that line. Because my x and my z are 0, and my x is at my y and my z are at 0, and my x is at 20. So that's the coordinate I want to line this thing up with. So I say enter, and I say at. Now when I go do an ID of that corner, you can see it's exactly at 20. That's how you make your models accurate. By lining them up with objects that you know have a solid coordinate, or lining them up using a point filter to a coordinate that you know is going to be accurate. I see this kind of stuff all the time. And I have to fix stuff like this all the time because people don't realize that just because you think something is accurate doesn't mean it's accurate. If I put a line and I do an ID of that coordinate and it says 699.9615, that's because of my precision. But if I go change my precision to just 0 and I do an ID, it rounds it to 700 because my precision is only set to a 1 place, not even a decimal. That's not the real coordinate of this. In fact, if I change this all the way to the maximum precision, you can see that's the real precision. And that's just where AutoCAD precision stops. Who knows how much further it goes than that? So the way for me to fix that is to like stretch this, pick my base point, say .x of 700, 0, 0, at. And now with my maximum precision turned on, if I go ID that, it's 700 even, across the board zeros, because I forced that line to line up with that coordinate using a point filter. That's how you make your models accurate. Good day.